Here we go. Testing it. Let's do this. Come on, let's do this. Let's do this now. All right, let's go. There is the MGM logo. I think it's the MGM. Of course it's the MGM logo. What am I talking about? Hi, I'm Omar Moore. I am Omar Moore. I am a film critic, and this is the To Live and Die in L.A. audio commentary. Thank you very much for joining me on this journey. William Friedkin's 1985 thriller, neo-noir thriller, and the atmosphere is set right here with this lovely sunrise set. I know it says 2 o'clock in the afternoon, but it feels like it's a sunset. You hear the music there and you see the flags. You hear the music of Wang Chung. They did the entire soundtrack for the film. And this is the actual title song, To Live and Die in L.A. It's just perfectly placed over the image here of the cavalcade, convoy, if you will, of cars. And obviously the President of the United States is in one of those vehicles. May well be that one right there. And this film is a story about some Secret Service agents, one of whom is played by William Peterson, and there are several others in the movie as well, you will see. And in fact, the film was based on a book by Gerald Petievich, who was a real-life U.S. Secret Service agent. He also co-writes the screenplay with William Friedkin. I love this shot here. Overhead. I just love the way that the Wang Chung song To Live and Die in LA plays over this whole thing. It's this image of people being trapped in Los Angeles, and you see that this is not typically the way Hollywood films represent Los Angeles. It's usually something that's very generic and bland and standard, but this film by William Friedkin is anything but standard. Even the way this helicopter flies over here, it's very shaky and unsteady, which gives you this prelude to what is to come in this movie. You are going to be continuously shaken and unsettled by what happens, and I hope you've seen the movie already. This film takes place in the contemporaneous time of 1985. That's when it was released, and the movie was set in that same time period and era in the 80s. And you hear Ronald Reagan's voice. He was the president of the United States at that time. And let me just paint some of the other landscape as well really quickly. In the UK, you had the Falkland Islands War, I think, had come to an end by this time. You had an era of the me generation, which we had here in the United States. And you had HIV, AIDS coming into full bloom or full view. Not by Reagan, though. He pretended that it didn't exist. And the HIV AIDS crisis was a serious thing back in the 1980s. It's still very serious, of course, but now there's treatments for HIV, whereas back at the time this film was made, there weren't. I say that because you will see some characters in this movie, and there's a crudeness and callousness to the way this movie unfolds. And it's the same kind of crudeness and callousness that people dismissed AIDS and HIV. And, it was horrible when people did that, and it still is. I love the venture into darkness here, and we see that someone has been killed. It looks like a police officer, could be a security guard, but it's a police officer, as we can see by the hat there. And William Peterson, who has been running in the darkness here, is trying to find who may have done this, and he's running. And I just love the way that this is shot. This is shot natural light. This is not done with any kind of augmentations. As far as I know, it's all shot not with process. It's completely ambient with some light, but mostly ambient light here with the obvious. Now this is a prelude to what we see, how life is so fleeting, and look at what happens here. This is a stereotype, of course, of people being, terrorists, and it's a very simplistic way of doing it all. But watch this. and the viscera, right? The blowing out, that is a digital wipe though. The viscera, this man blows himself to pieces, and we really don't even know why. It's a very simplistic rendering. And there are the two Secret Service agents there. On the far left, William Peterson playing the Secret Service agent, and his mentor right next to him, who is I think the more senior, obviously, between the two of them in this particular film. And you can see he's wounded here, and William Peterson is smoking a cigarette. One of the things that To Live and Die in L.A., and look at how lurid this is. I love how super saturated this all is. And here are now the proper opening credits. And this part that you're hearing now is called City of Angels. Of course, it's all from Wang Chung. And look at the titles and look at how lurid and bright the colors are. And that's the theme. It's so lurid and crude and grimy and sinful looking. It's, even you can barely make out the names in script there because they're so scarlet red, it seems to bleed into itself. And look at that, it seems so crude. It's just slapped on the screen like that in large letters, in LA. It's this very, and then look at the palm tree, and look at this shot of a woman there in close-up with the makeup on. It's very striking and powerful, and the cinematography is quite arresting. Dean Stockwell's name there, he has passed away. So has Robert Downey Sr. Both of them passed away, by the way, in 2021. And we just see literally the transactional nature of things right before us, drugs, whatever, the cash being exchanged. Drugs were a major, major problem in 1985 in the United States, and they still are a major, major problem in the United States. Nothing's really changed there. It's now not necessarily as much in the open as it was back at the time of 1985, at the time this movie was released. But what you're seeing here is this establishment of how money is just so clear and pervasive. It's money that's, all about drug dealing and all about all kinds of other things. It could be sex, it could be drugs, but it's not rock and roll. I think this film revels in its crudeness, and William Friedkin is a director who shows you people who have gone to excess one way or another, and sometimes the excess is good, sometimes it's not. Here is Rick Masters, who is played by Willem Dafoe. I think it's one of the best pieces of work on film that Willem Dafoe has done, and he's done many. This is one of his earliest films, and here's the close-up of him. And notice that he's the first character that we see in real close-up. And I like the way that's done, because normally the protagonist of a film is the one that we see in fairly decent-sized close-up, but yet the person we see here is not necessarily the protagonist. You may argue, if you've seen this film before, that there may not be a true protagonist in To Live and Die in L.A. And we realize that this is not necessarily the protagonist. Look what he's doing to his artwork there. And look at how striking those flames are. Look at the orange. Look at that flame. And that is digital there. It certainly looks that way. Some kind of post-production ad. It looks very, very good. Very striking. And so you suggest the fact that we've got someone who's burning art seems like another kind of metaphor. But the character that Willem Dafoe plays, who we've just seen, is someone who believes in doing things very precisely. You will notice that he's a very precise person. Here's William Peterson now, and he's about to do this. We see that there is a rope tied to his, a cord tied to his ankle on his right jean there. And it's kind of a little trick that I think the filmmaker does, is because we think that he's going to end his life, surely. If he's jumping off this bridge from that high, he is not going to survive. And then the trick comes in and we see, oh, he's playing around here and he's on a wire doing a bungee jumping or whatever the heck that was. I would never bungee jump. Would you? I mean, I would just soon enough jump out of a plane with a parachute, and pull the cord from that than I would from than ever bungee jump. I think that's far less safe than bungee jumping. But this is looks like a retirement party. And here is the Secret Service agent, the senior agent who is retiring. And I think his name is Vukovic. No, it's not Vukovic. It's someone else who plays Vukovic. I'll tell you about him later on, John Pankow. But this actor is now walking out here in the brown jacket. William Peterson's character is in the, looks like the Pittsburgh Steelers shirt that he's wearing, number 52. That may be Pittsburgh Steelers, I think it is. Their road shirt, maybe. But this is the retirement of his partner, his boss. And the relationship between them seems a little bit more uneasy. William Peterson is the kind of the hotshot, cocky guy who's got a lot of confidence, a little arrogance in him too. And the guy there who is retiring is more of the weathered, I've seen it all, been there, done that type. And he is looking like someone who's been through it all. He's been through quite a bit. And now he's saying his farewells as he prepares for the golden years of life. There's something very edgy about the way that William Peterson's character moves around. He's kind of a little ragged, and then you notice the precision of the Willem Dafoe character, Rick. There's a precision about everything he does, and the camera chronicles his every move in a very precise and orderly way. That's something I found very fascinating about the Willem Dafoe character, as you see him here. He is all about process. Look, everything, there's obviously counterfeited money here, but it's all very precise and taken down and done with great care, great deliberation, very methodical, very careful. He is an artist. He's also a crook. And there is this theme of artful criminals and kind of law enforcement who, let's say, aren't so artful at all. They are wayward and all over the place, and perhaps even borderline criminal, although that won't surprise some of the people who may be listening to this commentary. The character of Rick is he seems like someone that's very sensitive, who cares about what he does, and every move that he makes and every thing that he does matters to him. As compared to William Peterson's character, who is a bit reckless, as I said, wayward, cocky, arrogant. And you see the care that Rick is taking over everything he does. Look, I mean, everything is so careful and processed, and he's taking a look at it. Look at that red, that crimson, scarlet actually. And it's all artful and all done in a very precise way, and that's one of the things that I love about the way Friedkin has set this movie up. He has not set it up in a very black and white way at all, although in some ways there's a lot of black and white about it in terms of some of the things we see, but in a very real sense, there's a lot of nuance in this movie, punctuated by very dramatic, colorful flourishes and effects and scenes bathed and drenched in lots of deep color and things that are just seem very much out of place, but are for the trade that these characters are getting into is very much in place. This is really striking color. The green, as the money is going to get printed up and counterfeited and all, and it's just all process. Look at that. It's all process. It's all orderly. Everything is done in a very mechanical way, very robotic, mechanical, and careful. And that's why Rick is an important character. He's an artist, but he's an artist who is an artful criminal who, while he's very sensitive and very careful, he's also very ruthless and very blunt and very brutal. And the mechanics of the process that are undergone here seem like the veneer to what we're going to start to see about Rick. Although even when we start to see these things about Rick that aren't so positive, let's say, it's still done with a sense of precision and no muss, no fuss, that when compared to the character that William Petersen plays, it is, there's so much recklessness and abandon and a lack of care from what this Secret Service agent does. And you would think, in quotes, that a Secret Service agent would be much more careful and deliberate with what he or she or they do. But it's completely the opposite here in this film. You have a Secret Service agent who is doing some things that are really reckless and brazen and way over his own head in some ways. And you've got a criminal, and you'll find out that Rick is obviously that. You know that. He's already laundered a whole load of money. And you will find, though, that he's very precise and very careful and very augmented in his movement, and very, in the same time, very, very deliberate about his movements. All of this, him in the car that he's driving there, the black car, everything is precisely done. Everything is about precision and neatness. Whereas with William Petersen's character, it's a very disorderly messiness. I love this shot through the night here. Very low light indeed here for this one. I think it's pretty much shot as is with minimal extra light. There's really no light here. This is of course, the character who is retiring. You see him literally riding off into the sunset, and then, hey presto, the next shot, he is now moving on into another realm. He's in somewhere else. And you notice the handwriting, the titles. The titles change. The font of the title change. First one, I think, was Courier New in the font. Now this one is this kind of handwritten font for the titles. So notice that as well. The title font changes. I love the camera work here, the push right up on this character. And I think he's doing some kind of reconnaissance. It's been a long time since I've seen To Live and Die in L.A. I've seen it one other time since it came out, but it's still, the memory fades. The memory fades. Here is the lead agent who is, I think, undertaking this one last mission before his retirement, and this is the one last mission before he rides off into the sunset. And he is doing some reconnaissance mission here. And notice the way that this is being shot. Right? This is really a trap, and it's part of this vice. And look at who is there. It's Rick. And the graphic brutality is underway here now, again. And now Rick again exacts a cruel blow. Actually, his henchman does. And we get to see all of that. We see the headshots, the kill shots. And that's part of the brutality and the ruthlessness of the characters in the world that they live in. It's not that, I think at least, and notice the font change again. Now it's more of the kind of digitalized font. It's not that the director, William Peterson, is trying to, in my view, be gratuitous. I think what he's depicting is this ruthlessness about the world that these people live in and the world that these people know. So we're going to see a lot more very graphic point blank shots. There's a real air of realism to it there. Forgive me for being redundant there, but realism is part of this because that's how it is when people get killed. A blast to the head, and sometimes people's heads are blown off. And the camera does not spare us any of this because this is the world of violence that these people live in, and a real life police officer or detective or Secret Service agent would see things exactly the way we are seeing them now in this film. Notice the monochromatic shot here until the light comes on and we see that everything is all, kind of one color again. But that there is John Pankow. He plays Agent Vukovich. He is going to be a major figure in this film. And you will see why if you have not already seen this film. There is a profoundly artistic mode all the way through the movie. I mean, all of this is art, of course, but there again, the director is also taking great care to show us the artifacts of the world these people live in. And in this case, here is a kind of a front house where Rick laid the trap for the retired agent who is murdered. And his partner is now going to realize that that blood belongs to his longtime mentor and partner. And I love this shot here of Vukovich behind William Peterson, John Pankow, and in front there, William Peterson. I love the way that shot's set up, and you will see why it's set up that way later. You'll understand why. That's the only shot in the movie where that happens, and also the only shot where we don't see the dead body of somebody after, because we've already seen the dead body, the kill shot, and we don't get to see it again here with this particular character because we've already seen it as an audience. So we are left with the reactions, which I think makes sense here, obviously. Now we're going to see John Vukovich again here now in a few moments. And there he is. And he is now at the forefront of the camera shot with William Peterson at the back. Again, this is for me a preview of what's to come. And the director is giving us this idea of these two men who are both Secret Service agents, but you're going to get this idea about the two of them and where they stand in this narrative. And the height difference is interesting too, because you now have William Peterson's character who is in charge. And the guy in charge, William Peterson, is, this gung-ho type of guy. I'm going to bag masters. I'm going to go and get him. I don't care how. And that's the thing, as I said earlier, the recklessness about him. He's a cowboy, this reckless person who is just going to go out there and get masters. And he doesn't understand that there's a procedure to doing all this. And you see Rick Masters is the procedural guy, right? The criminal who is so careful about the way he launders money, the way he aligns things, the way he processes things. There's Robert Downey Sr. right there. You just saw him in the white shirt. As I said, he passed away in 2021. Of course, he was independent filmmaker and an actor as well, and did some really good films, including Putney Swope, one of his most famous movies. He also, by the way, appeared in Boogie Nights later on in his career in a cameo role. Note again the different font. This time it's kind of an LED type font for the title there, January 3rd. John Pankow's Vukovich character is much more of a by-the-book type of guy. You know, he believes in courtesy, he believes in respect, he believes in procedure. He believes in doing the things the way he's been taught to do them, how to do them, and not to do what we all do once we get our driver's licenses. We just kind of take license and do whatever the heck we want, many of us. See how reckless that is? He's just running through, right? Secret Service, and you see he just causes this great commotion. And of course he's going to trigger the response here from the guy in the briefcase who's running ahead of him. And there's no subtlety to the William Peterson character at all. He's just a bull in a china shop. Look at him. Just running through an airport like O.J. Simpson did for those Hertz commercials many years back. But there's no stealth at all about William Peterson's character. He's just look at that. He's a complete hot dog. He's jumping over chairs. You know, he doesn't have to do any of that. It's all showy, but there's nothing that comes of a lot of it than posturing and gesticulating, which is a lot of this masculine overdrive that this character has. He is very much an alpha male, but I think he is someone also who suffers from a lack of humility. By the way, his character's name is Richard Chance. That's the Peterson character. It's interesting that two characters are named Rick or Richard. The William Peterson character, Richard Chance, and the Willem Dafoe character, Rick Masters. And the funny thing is that both of their first names in real life are William, and I think that's very interesting. See, this is how rash the Richard Chance is. Look what he does. He gets everybody into a real pickle. Just came in to take a leak. That's what that character said there. But you see all the chaotic stuff. He does everything spontaneously and does everything so rashly. Here is John Turturro, and this is one of his earlier roles too, and it's just great to see him here, especially when you know what kind of career he's had, and you just see him. It's just great. And there is Willem Dafoe. Both of these guys are New York guys. John Turturro is a Brooklyn guy, and I think Willem Dafoe is from Manhattan. I know I bumped into him once on the Upper East Side of Manhattan, years ago, and he looks just the same in real life as he does on the screen. Very distinctive look, and he's a very nice, decent person. If you ever meet Willem Dafoe, he's a really decent human being, and nothing like some of the really tough, complex, and very powerful characters he plays on the big screen. There's three Williams in this film. One of them is the director, William Friedkin, who directs it, I should say. And then you've got Willem Dafoe and William Peterson. I say that Willem Dafoe is a New Yorker. I mean, well, he was born in the Midwest, but he is a New Yorker. He's been in New York, has lived there for quite some time now. So call him a New Yorker. This is the first real dialogue that has a sense of urgency to it and also a sense of fear, and two people who are really conveying things to each other. John Turturro is really concerned about his own future, obviously, and there's this very homoerotic pull to the Rick Masters character. And even in that moment there where you saw both of the men at the glass, just separated, lips almost pressing against each other against the glass, you will see that Rick Masters has a very androgynous quality to him, and I'm sure you figured that out by now. And there's Dean Stockwell. As I said, he also passed away in 2021. An actor who did a lot of different work over the years, character actor. He's done a whole load of movies. He had done a whole load of movies. Did some TV as well, and I think he did some stage too. He's no longer here with us though. Again, look at the backdrop of the color there. It's really strong. I love the fact that this film is bathed in color. Even for Los Angeles, that is something that you don't see represented on the big screen in Hollywood films particularly. Look at this. This is this is the performance art and the luridness. But it's really, I think, more than that, actually. It's a commentary on Los Angeles. Pardon me, I know, I'm not a Los Angelino. So people who are from Los Angeles, who may be listening to this commentary, and there's that shot again that we saw from the beginning of the woman there, close up with the makeup. But I think this is all, even though this is a production, dance production, this seems to me to be a commentary on L.A. And let me explain why. There is always a glitz and glamour about Los Angeles that we've seen forever through Hollywood and Hollywood film. And this film seems to poke holes in that, not necessarily to desecrate Hollywood, but to present an alternative side of it. And look at the androgyny. Both of these characters, and I love the cut here. And look at this. It's a great reveal, because I think many people looking at that looking at this film back in 1985, would have probably been spooked out by seeing in 1985, and I would not have been spooked out by this, but there would be people on this planet who would have been spooked out by seeing two men, what looked like two men, kissing each other there. And I think that to some degree there's a subversion of what Hollywood movies usually show us. We don't usually see open-mouthed kissing between two men in Hollywood films. And in this movie, it looks as if that's happening. And we see that through the Rick Masters character before with John Turturro at the prison when they were having their brief visit together, and the glass separated their lips and they were just almost pressing on the glass against each other's lips. And then you see again the shot there with what looked like a man but is revealed to be a woman. And I think that the film really does kind of take on the way Hollywood presents everything as very hetero. When we know that Hollywood, and in real life Hollywood, there were lots of people who, because of the homophobic environment and the homophobic society that we all still live in this day and age, back then and back in the 80s, back in the 1950s, you saw actors going out with people who were of the opposite sex, but it was as a complete cover and an act, because those actors were actually gay, and because a whole society hated gay people, and to an extent still does hate gay people and certainly hates trans people, there had to be this performance. You know, you had to go to the movie premiere with someone of the opposite sex, because otherwise you would have people writing rumors in papers, and it would be one of those kinds of things. So people, and I think of Rock Hudson off the top of my head, Rock Hudson, who had to do this all the time during his career, and going out in the town with women, and he's really somebody who is someone who prefers to be in the company of men and has relationships with men. But Hollywood was so homophobic, and again, I think it still is, as is the society, so that he had to, for his sake of his career and keeping himself viable in Hollywood, he had to pretend. And it's just horrible that we have to do that in this world, but it's a reality that's very real. And this film plays pretend at some points, but then it also reveals so staggeringly at others. I've just talked through a whole lot of things there, and there's just some intermediate chat there between someone who is trying to get more info about things. People are constantly trying to gain information in this film. I used to jump off garages as a kid. I mean, just tells you so much about Richard Chance as a character, as the character Richard Chance, played by William Peterson. He's a cowboy. He's a total cowboy, reckless, a Yahoo type, who is put in LA type of clothing, kind of LA stylish, although again, kind of a throwback LA, kind of a 1950s LA guy who really is in a 1980s movie, but is a complete cowboy. You will see here that there is a trap that's about to be laid, and it's going to come any minute now. And that rain is a signature, because here we go, right? The rain comes, and yeah, it's groovy. He doesn't think too much about the rain, but she does. She also knows that she's opened that door as a signal for something that's about to happen. And he's really going to come in with this. He's going to absolutely be hit with Mr. Rick Masters, who makes a visit to him. Oh yeah, let's blame the woman. She came on to me, man. Oh please. That's blame the woman. You had nothing to do with that. As if it doesn't take two to tango. Yeah, she may have come on to you, she may not have, but you participated. And now you're gonna pay the piper. Here's how ruthless Rick Masters is. Because he's going to take this money and take all this. Oh, but here we go. See, you shouldn't have done that, mate. You really shouldn't have done that. And there's the money. Money, money, money. Must be funny in a rich man's world. And you know what he's going to do with that? He's not going to be content to just look at it. Bang. He shoots us. I've never seen a shot quite like that, because at one point there the camera goes red. There's a red filter that comes across, and it's as if it's our blood, that explodes at us. It's as if he is literally shooting us. It's a very artful moment in the film, as this film is. It demonstrates color and rich tones and deep rich tones and lurid tones. But you see that the William Peterson character, again, he's dressed usually in black and blue, and is very much a throwback. You know, again, everyone else is kind of engaging in this very colorful, lurid types of things, and he's kind of a very, I guess, not black and white kind of character, but he's a very, in some ways, he's very much a bland character, but as I said, he's very reckless and very dangerous. And that's going to catch up to him, as we know by now. I said that you saw this uneasy relationship between the character that was killed earlier, the senior Secret Service agent, and the Richard Child's character played by William Peterson. I said that you saw that because you could tell that the William Peterson character, Richard Chance, is probably not a very good fit with the senior officer there, the senior Secret Service agent who was killed, because you get the sense that, and you know that the William Peterson character is a renegade. He's a rebel type. He's someone who is going to do things his way. And I suspect, just by the body language between the older Secret Service agent and the Richard Chance character, that they had come to blows or come to heads. They had butted heads in a number of occasions, years perhaps before the setting of this movie and the way it was set. And I think you could tell that by the way they kind of had this very uneasy rapport together, you know. See, the John Pankow character, Vukovich, is really trying to restrain William Peterson's character. And the William Peterson character, Richard Chance, wants to just go full hell bent for leather. And John Pankow's telling him, you know, hey, look, you know, I'm no snitch. You know, I'm not going to do this kind of thing, you know. I don't want to get involved in any of this, and you're going to take the heat. And I love this shot here. Look at that sunset, really good. Or it could be daybreak. It's just there's something about the LA depicted here. You really don't know what time of day it is, even though they tell you that the time of day that it is in some of those titles. It could be any time of day. I mean, this could be sunrise or it could be sunset. It looks beautiful either way. And again, the Wang Chung soundtrack. It's an excellent soundtrack. You've got to get that. I think the favorites of mine on there are the song Wait, which you will hear during the end credits. You may hear Wait before that as well. And the song To Live and Die in L.A. I love that. And of course, City of the Angels. Really good tunes. And City of the Angels is a recurring theme in the film. And if you listen to the soundtrack of that actual piece of music, it's about 8 or 9 minutes long, 9.5 minutes long. It's a long piece, but it's great. It's one of those kinds of pieces of music that gets you moving. If you were in a gym, you would want to probably put that on while you are doing your exercise routine or your workout. It's a very energizing piece of music. And this is clearly sunrise, and again, low light, very shadowy. It again is kind of a foreshadowing for the character. This is the woman that he had been seen with earlier, and you're going to see them have sex here in just a few moments. And one of the things that Peterson does here with the male characters is show them in various states of full frontal nudity, which even in the 1980s was a rare thing. And we see, obviously, we are accustomed to seeing women being full frontal in films, such as the sexism of the industry and the sexism of the planet, quite frankly. We are accustomed to seeing women topless. We just saw this particular woman topless, and we are accustomed to seeing women bottomless on the screen, even in R-rated movies. This shot here is a reprise from what is going to be a reprise for later. We're going to see the same shot later on right here of William Peterson, and we can see clearly that they're both obviously bottomless now, and I think he's going to take that right off of her. Yeah, I remember this. I remember this shot, and you can see them both. I mean, they're both full frontal, genitalia out, and as shot, that's how that was. And you can see this all very clearly here. It's all full frontal, and it was shot as is. It's a naturalistic shot. And then from the other side, we see, again, she's putting her underwear on. He's there with a towel draped around his neck. She's lying there. That's a shot that was reprieved before, with her legs sticking up like that, her knees in the air, sticking up there. And that shot there, that was what we saw earlier, if you remember, at the very beginning. So this movie plays out in fragments. In fact, it plays as if it's all happened in the past. At least a lot of this movie does. And you will see why by the time you get to the end of it, that this may well have been chronicled at a time at least a couple of years, before a couple of years after the events happened, as if someone's just playing them back to us. Here's the story of these people, blah, blah, blah. I mean, it's not entirely clear what their relationship is. They're clearly casual lovers, or what some people would have said in the early 2000s or late 1990s as a booty call. But they are either casual sex partners, or they may have a more connected relationship than that. It's hard to really say, hard to really tell. So there's this, that may actually be, I don't know who's, I shouldn't even guess, but there's a warning. She says the same thing that happened to Max may happen to you, or may happen to me. And so it's the first time that a character has pointed out to Richard Chance the mortality that is going to come for all of us. But he is met with this from one of the characters, and he's just kind of facing that now. He's trying to, I think, weigh that whole thing of the likelihood that he could end up dead doing what he's doing. Secret Service agents are very, very, they've got a lot of responsibilities, and their jobs are to take a bullet for the president or for any high-ranking official or any official in government. Secret Service agents don't only do that, but they are on the detail of taking care of political leaders, and their job literally requires them, and I know it's crude of me to say this, but it does require them having to take a bullet, literally, for the President of the United States or someone else. I mean, when Ronald Reagan was shot, he was an assassination attempt that happened literally, 4 years before this movie came out. There were people who got seriously hurt, seriously injured, in that shooting. Look at the handheld here of this shot. It's really good. This shot, by the way, and this whole thing here reminds me of a film that would come 20 years later, called Collateral, and it was directed by Michael Mann. I'm sure you remember Collateral, with Tom Cruise and Jamie Foxx. And there's a scene where Tom Cruise's character, who is the villain in that movie, the villain of the piece, runs headlong, runs at a breakneck pace through a long bridge at night to chase after the Jamie Foxx character. and it's a great shot, and it's shot in a very similar way. I wouldn't be shocked if Michael Mann had done that and looked at this film and took that as an inspiration. More artwork, and this, I think, is Rick Masters' old art professor, and so he is showing you the kinds of paintings I think that Rick had done for him in his art gallery and his artwork. And so the John Pankow character there, who's just asking questions, is now here again upon what the art professor's advice was to him. And so you see there's a much more methodical, procedural aspect to Vukovich, the John Vukovich character played by John Pankow. There's a carefulness, and he's not reckless, he's not a cowboy, he's not arrogant. He's simply trying to do his job. And so that's really what, Vukovich is about. He's very much by the book. He believes in procedural methods, just like Rick Masters does. And here he is again. I just think of Rick Masters, and I actually think of Arnold Schwarzenegger in the first Terminator. Actually, in Terminator 2, actually, the second Terminator. Even the way this is shot, the color, it looks like there's a bit of a color drain in this shot here. It's not shot with full color. There's kind of a monochromatic element to it. And it's a little bit darker in terms of the way the cinematography lenses. It's like the lens, the color, the lighting has been taken out of it a bit here. And it's to approximate the realism, and I don't know which neighborhood this is, but you see the artwork there, the murals, the artwork. It's just fantastic. I mean, there's graffiti all over a lot of it. There's Stevie Wonder, who's got graffiti all over him there in the yellow. But this is the levels of artwork we see throughout this movie, whether it's naturally done for real on those murals, which those were, or whether it's made up art that's been constructed perhaps by an art department or something. In the case of Rick Masters' art that we just saw with the art professor, its art is already always constant in this film. Obviously the artistry of the film and the production design of the film, but just within that there is another level of art that just pops out of us. In fact, it's very, very much an artistic thing. Now Rick is visiting someone who he knew. Both of them are doing these things, and we know that this is the prelude to another scene, and the next time they see each other, it's not going to be so friendly. Look at that. It looks a bit like a penitentiary. It may well be. And look at all the nature. Look at the artwork here. Look at these trees, and it is a penitentiary. Look at those trees that you just saw, and all nice and trimmed. It's even amongst this group of people who are in jail, in prison. There's this art of these trees being nicely, neatly curated in a way, or put together. And no doubt some of the inmates there were responsible for that. And you see what's going on here now. There is an establishment of boundaries that are going to be crossed. And here's John Turturro's character along with a buddy of his, and you see another group of characters, and they're all beginning to kind of do their formation. You've got others who are kind of walking away because they know that something's coming, and they know that trouble is its name. The law of the jungle. Now, look what's going on here. And this is pretty wild. And you just see the way that shot is done. And those are people who are attacking people who are close to Rick Masters. So John Turturro's character is. And here we go. And look at what's happened here. Here's Richard Chance with his shades on. Claudia Leith, or Leth. And again, it's the way this character dresses, the black leather jacket, the shades, the Knight Rider shades, you know, the same kind of shades that you would see David Hasselhoff wearing in Knight Rider, which was around in that same time period. I think it was from the maybe late 1970s into 1980s, I think 1984, 85. So it was right around the same time. Knight Rider was a big TV series back then. And everybody seemed to be dressing a little bit like either Michael Jackson from the Beat It / Thriller days, or David Hasselhoff, Don't Hassle the Hoff, with his jacket and the shades. And everybody seemed to have a car very similar to the one that David Hasselhoff was driving in Knight Rider. I mean, those are two of the iconic things about the 1980s in terms of TV and music. Michael Jackson on the one hand, although he couldn't get on MTV if he had paid them to. And I've talked about that before in many other different fora about the racism of MTV. And then there was someone like David Hasselhoff, who ended up becoming a parody of himself, but in a good way, I guess. He ended up really parlaying his own name into a catchphrase that he actually trademarked: "Don't hassle the Hoff." That was such a really big thing, and it's funny how that kind of endured for quite some time. So now John Turturro is looking for protection. He's just had the visit of Richard Chance. He's now feeling squeezed in a vice. It's kind of like the theme tune for the movie, from the Wang Chung song To Live and Die in L.A. I feel like I'm being held in some invisible vice, but I can't get away. And that's exactly what is going on with all these characters. They can't get away. And look at the hand. Guess whose hand that belongs to? Guess who that hand belongs to? Of course it's him. It can only be Rick Masters. See? The news travels fast. But this is the next encounter, and this next encounter happened literally about, 3.5 minutes after the first encounter we saw between them? And there's a freezing there of the character, the brother. And there's a freezing of him too, the other brother that you see there. And it looks not so good for Mr. Masters here, as the brothers are going to definitely tell him where to go. Or so they think. The thing about Rick Masters is that he's cool and calm about what he wants and what he needs. And even a guy that is portrayed in a very androgynous manner. I think it's excellent acting from Willem Dafoe. As I said, I think it's the best acting he's done in pretty much, I can't think of too many other movies he's done that have been good in terms of his acting. But you see here's now we're talking about some real violence here. And it doesn't matter if the character is androgynous or not. That's not the issue. The issue doesn't matter. It's that he doesn't care. He's a very fearless character. He will go into any arena to get what he wants. He has a sense of that kind of justice. And you see what's happening here. But eventually the tables are going to get turned. And, his henchman is never far away. Right? And watch the violence here, and you're going to see the heads get blown off in close-up, and it's going to be pretty bloody here, and we already see it. And we're going to see this pretty badly right now. And, and boy, we didn't see it, but there you go. But Rick literally has money to burn. And look at how, again, the artistry of this. There was a movie that came out, I think, the same year in 1985 called The Year of the Dragon. And there's a scene almost exactly similar to this, with that kind of that background there that you would see in, I think, a lot of Asian movies, this kind of Asian curtains or whatever those are back there, and two people on a bed that's red, or it's got red sheets on it, and they're both naked, and they're both enjoying each other, having sex and really being at one with each other. And there's a scene in The Year of the Dragon that's very similar to that. And that film starred Mickey Rourke and a number of other people. I think John Lone may have been in that movie as well. Came out around the same time. I think it was either 1985 or perhaps 84, somewhere around there, or maybe even a little later. But I think it was either 84, 85, or 86 off the top of my head. It's the first time we see William Peterson with a tie on, at least that I can think of, outside of the opening scene. This time it's a light blue tie with a white shirt. And it's kind of funny because it's the first time that I can see that his wardrobe seems so much more, perky, even though the color scheme doesn't look great. There's some life to that wardrobe that seems tired, if not anything else. And one of the things I notice about the character here is that he's kind of going through these phases. And he's losing the war right now. Richard Chance, who is used to doing things his way and being the cowboy, is now being stepped on by authorities who are reining him in. And he's realizing that the buck stops here. It really does. And, his boss here is not going to give him what he's looking for. And so he has to leave, and he's going to now break the rules. I don't know if that's the mayor or whomever that is, but he certainly isn't happy. Don't say something you'll regret later. Oh, there we go. See, and he goes out. The hothead. He's very much a hothead. Is William Peterson's character. William Peterson played in the CSI series, the TV series that was on CBS television in the United States for a number of years. I don't know if he still does. I believe it was a CSI, and there were many CSI series, crime scene investigation. That's what CSI stands for. And there was one, I think, set in L.A. I think that was the one that he was a part of. Surprise, surprise. Notice the script again here now. See that title? John Turturro there in the car. He now has protection from all of those who are looking to get him. And again, there's a monochromatic element to the film here. For all the color that we see, and there's some color in the background and brightness there, and it's a full day. We also see a building that's monochromatic, and then you've got their outfits that are as well. A kind of the overgrown coat jacket that Turturro's character is wearing here. It's kind of this really seems a little bit too big for him, as you can see there. Looks like it's drowning him. Ooh, see how this happens? The suddenness and the turning of the tables. And there you go. He turns around, and again, look at him. This is William Peterson. He's supposed to be at least the leading character now in the film. And I love the way that palm tree, by the way, is placed right in the middle of that shot there, with a doctor who looks a little bit like Patrick Swayze. He's now the late Patrick Swayze. This doctor is not Patrick Swayze, however, but he looks just like him. You see how the Richard Chance character again, he just goes by his own rules, and he puts himself in this position. He uncuffs someone who is a criminal, and that's something you should never be doing as a Secret Service agent. You don't do stuff like that. And this this Secret Service agent doesn't care, though. He will just do anything. Anything. Doesn't matter if it's by the book or not. You just see the calm here from the Vukovich character on the right hand side. There on the left is Dean Stockwell again. And he just calmly sits down and talks to the person he's trying to get information from. And that's the way of his whole procedural thing. He's very methodical and calm. It's so interesting because what the film does is take stereotypes, or takes these preconceived notions and prejudices that we have about people, and actually makes the people who we have the prejudices and preconceived notions about very capable, clear, relatable, and intelligent people for the sake of the narrative. Now, obviously, we know that people who are short of stature and people who may have a touch of androgyny to them are all, the decent people. We all know that. That's obvious. There's a lot, however, of projection and preconceived notions and prejudices that are thrown at these characters. And we see three characters together here. The Vukovich character, who's in glasses now, the dark shades. I think that's interesting. And the William Peterson character, who's got the white jacket on that he's just taking off there. And then you've got Rick Masters there on the left, who is going to strip down butt naked. In fact, I think at least two of them will here. Maybe William Peterson's character as well. And there's something about men throughout this movie that the director William Friedkin gets to. It's not only about the question of, I was about to say misogyny. And there you see the John Pankow character also stripping down. But there's something about this film that also talks about men in a way that they're much more, I think, accessible to their feelings. Certainly Rick Masters appears to be. And even though they don't go very deep with their feelings or express them very deeply, you can always get the sense that Rick Masters is someone who could do that given the right time and price. He's very much someone who's in touch with who he is as a person, and certainly in touch with the mission he's on. But the William Peterson character is not in touch with himself at all. He's not even in touch with the mission. He is somebody who is all about, getting to the result, the means to the ends, or whatever. He just believes in doing something at all cost, at any cost. But I think look at the way he positions these three men. And look at the way that Willem Dafoe massages that bench he's been doing arm curls on with the white towel, the black bench. And he's kind of massaging it as if he's stroking somebody, or maybe stroking himself. It's just, again, all of this. And again, another stage here of these three men together, this time in the sauna. And again, they are, obviously naked except for the towels. But these three scenes together that we've just seen, or two, at least three of in the last four scenes or so, of these three men together is revealing, because these three men define the very states of the film, the masculine state of the characters, the masculine state of where these people will end up or not end up. And there's a light that shines near Rick Masters that kind of comes in on him. And then you've got Vukovich, who's close to it. And then you have Peterson as a Richard Chance, who's on the furthest side to the right, away from the light. And I think that's telling. I think that's very telling. Look at the colors behind Willem Dafoe there. The purple and the red, the scarlet. Now, in this scene, the Vukovic character and the Chance character are posing as money launderers, and they've come in undercover for the Rick Masters character. Here again is Robert Downey Sr. And see, there's the two of them there, and they dress very alike now. You see Vukovic and Chance, they're in blue, kind of this powder blue or richer blue than that. And they now dress alike. It's interesting. There's this transition there. But they played undercover, and they were money launderers there, and they're going to find out what Rick Masters is about. And look, Robert Downey Sr. is reminding William Peterson that you have to go through protocol and procedure, you know? And there you go. And he's reminding him, you have to go through the rules and you can't break protocol. You lost a federal prisoner. And then again, he's a cowboy, and I lost him and I'll get him back. I mean, there's a recklessness. Again, I keep saying this. There's a recklessness to the William Peterson character that you don't usually see from a lot of protagonists in these types of movies. I mean, it has happened before, of course, in Hollywood films. But in the 1980s, this kind of recklessness was really finely tuned here in a very clear way by William Peterson. I think he does a really good job of playing somebody who, in some ways, is trying to restrain himself, but his id just goes right through the roof, and ego goes over the roof and through it and takes over. And so he's manifesting the id and the ego that's just absolutely leading him to do everything in a way that's so impulsive that it ends up causing more trouble for him and headaches for the police in L.A. And for all of this. And this is a Secret Service agent. Both of them are. One of them on the right hand side, Vukovic, is much more careful, as I've said, and the other one, Peterson, who plays Richard Chance, is an absolute cowboy. He's absolutely all over the place. See, there's all of this back and forth and arguing between them, and it's really about one person who's all about procedure, the other one is all about doing it my way, and they just butt heads continuously here. And it's again these triple scenes of men, the same two men we saw previously, triple scenes of three men together. Now it's two or three scenes of two men together. Yeah, it's the cowboy talking here. You ain't got the nuts, and now he's calling him names, and it's a very juvenile and childish reaction from Richard Chance, whereas Vukovic just sits there as the adult in the room. And we don't need to see any larger. Oh my goodness me, topless from 11 a.m. 11 a.m. My goodness, they start that early, huh? And then look, we don't know where to enter here either. There's no way we could ever find out where to enter this topless bar. And look at the color again. We go back to the lurid nature of things. And this, I think, is the same woman that he's been sleeping with. And so, again, you see what's going on here and the inquiry. And again, in the background, you see a woman who's topless, and the color and the saturation of the color. And this is, this is back to where the movie was at the beginning, or near the beginning. This is where the movie is actually most comfortable, with the color really bleeding out at you and the saturation of color so rich and so deep. Because these are the zones that the movie plays in, not just stylistically, but within the hearts of these characters. These characters, I think the red absolutely represents Richard Chance. This kind of very impulsive, hot-blooded way of looking at things. And he actually stops to take a look at this particular woman here, who doesn't have much of an audience because it's probably about 11 a.m. See, even in this scene, again, I mean, the constant establishing of how reckless and dangerous this particular Secret Service agent is. How are you going to bag him? He's not even committed a crime yet. I mean, she's telling him that. I mean, it's as if the conscience of the senior Secret Service person who was murdered is completely confronting him every time, and he's completely disregarding it. Whether it's the Vukovich character in that guise, whether it's the woman that you just saw there in that guise, as basically the conscience of the Secret Service agent who mentored him. And here again is another change in the title script. Look at that. I love that. It's a constantly moving target. The way that this film narrates its presence, the way that this film brings about a sense of what the scene is going to be, what the mood is going to be based on the way the titles look. Look at the close-up on that bottle, Miller High Life, and look at the cigarette smoke and everything. It's placed in a way that I think is very telling. And that bottle of beer, I think, was pretty much empty. So that should kind of tell you something. There used to be in San Francisco an Amtrak train station. And I don't know if this is actually the same one. Because there used to be a train station and they closed that all down now. And I think it used to run all the way into Fort Mason in San Francisco, California. And so after the earthquake, I think they closed it in the 1989 Loma Prieta earthquake. Or maybe this is shot somewhere else, but I know there used to be either an Amtrak station or some kind of train station that would run literally right in to San Francisco. It is entirely possible this was shot somewhere else, but this is supposed to be San Francisco. It's probably Los Angeles, though. Here's John Pankow again as Vukovich, and look, he's got the dark shades on. And just like William Peterson does. It's interesting how, for all the times these two Secret Service agents butt heads, they both are beginning to dress like each other. The Ray-Ban shades, and the 1980s aviators. And I think that, as I said earlier, the senior retiring Secret Service agent who was murdered in this film earlier, I think he and the Richard Childs character that William Peterson plays, I think they butted heads a lot and they probably didn't like each other very much. So you could sense that tension between them. And the older guy was the mentor and was telling him constantly what to do. And I think the younger guy, played by Peterson, I think was a lot of arrogance and hot air. And we're seeing that has unabated here, and wherever they are, whether it's in San Francisco or somewhere else, maybe Emeryville in the East Bay in Northern California, in the San Francisco Bay Area. Look at this. I mean, Richard Chance is an absolute cowboy. Look at this, just reckless, and I mean, you don't do this if you're a Secret Service agent. You don't do something like this. What you do is you would probably, look at that, you would probably end up having someone open that more carefully. And he's just absolutely made an ass of himself by doing that. And he's just looked really stupid here. And again, look at that. Again, this is what happens. He will get tripped up by his own rashness and stupidity. First it was the federal prisoner played by John Turturro who ended up, kicking his backside, kicking his ass. And now this man on the left-hand side did the same thing, kicked his ass as well. He is someone who can easily be turned over. And look at how crazy this is. I mean, this is just not the way you're supposed to do this. That's the 4th Street Bridge in Los Angeles. It's a famous location there. That brick there is always famous because it's used in so many movies that are filmed there. And look at this again. You see how open everything is. That's how reckless this all is. Look how open everything is. I mean, that's Rick Master's buddy, and or at least, I'm sorry, that's some Secret Service accomplices. And you see how crazy all of this is, because the cowboy attitude has got everybody now in a real pear-shaped situation, shall we say. The man there is dead. He got shot, dead, as you saw. And for what? For what? He didn't do anything. You know, it was just a completely rash operation. These gun-toting, cop-killing monsters have now ended the life of a guy who didn't do anything. He came in. The tip was obviously wrong. It was the wrong tip, deliberately or otherwise. He had a telephone book in there. He didn't have any money in there. There was no reason to detain him. You just let him go at that point. You maybe ask him some questions, and then you let him go. Take his ID, or take a look at his ID, run a check on him, and then leave if nothing comes up or whatever. And there's nothing there that he's committed a crime about, and then he ends up being killed. So it's just a complete waste. Nothing comes of that. And now we have the car chase. And this is really the first time that the John Pankow character, John Vukovich, experiences just how rash and reckless and dangerous the Richard Chance character, played by William Peterson, is. This is a great Friedkin car chase scene that echoes, to some degree, the same scene that was shot by Friedkin in the film The French Connection, which is widely regarded as one of the 2 best films that William Friedkin has directed. You know, the other one was The Exorcist. But my favorite film of William Friedkin's is undoubtedly this particular film, To Live and Die in L.A. And what you're going to see here is full-blown Richard Chance. Just the recklessness and the danger. It's like a little kid in a candy store who does not know when to stop. And literally we are seeing that now in what is one of the craziest, freakiest car chase scenes that there is. And as I said, it's kind of you see that bird there, that crow that flies across. I'm sure that was a complete accident or it was deliberate, but I can't imagine it would be that deliberate. The timing of that's really great. But again, it almost looks like the same car, I think, that Popeye Doyle drove in The French Connection. I don't remember if that was a black car. It may have been a black sedan. I'm not sure if I remember. That film came out many years ago now. But you see the way that the camera is herky-jerky. You see the way that everything now is all over the place. You see the way that cars are just driving all over the railroad and the tracks, and you see this train here that's going to absolutely crush anything in its way. And like in The French Connection, where you saw Popeye Doyle driving his car over tracks or under a bridge in New York City, here you've got the West Coast edition of that scene, in a way, very similar, as these guys are coming to kill the Richard Chance character and the John Vukovich character. And you just look at this, look at that. Oh, God. And then it's just crazy what happens here. I mean, I don't know how many times this was shot, but it just goes to show you there's just absolute reckless abandon in all of it. It just continues to unfold in front of us. And by the time that train has passed by, these 2 characters are seemingly safely out of sight. And there's this premature smile and celebration from Richard Chance, and he thinks that, you see the big grin on his face, he thinks that it's all over here. And you've got Vukovic kind of thrilling, enjoying it too. He's kind of enjoying it. But they realize that they have not gotten away at all, because here they are again on the tail of Vukovic and Chance. And they are continuing to prove to be very tough customers. Now as another car, I mean, they've all come out to get him. And he somehow escapes. It's cat and mouse and a lot more than that. And notice the windshield wipers and the rain and the water on there. Well, it's not the rain, it's water. And look at that, the darkness, the silhouetting of Vukovic there. I think that's a very telling thing. And look at that, shooting through the glass where the bullet entered, the bullet hole. It's just wild. Look at that. They've spared no expense to try to get these two. It's just like the song, as I said, that Wang Chung sang, To Live and Die in L.A. I feel that I'm held in an invisible vice and I can't get away. And this is true in this scene here. You know, this is true. And he's kind of reliving the moment where he is taking it to the limit, as the Eagles would say. And he's going through all these memories. And you can't tell which one of them is going through, but it's probably Peterson's character. Then the man getting shot, himself jumping and bungee cord jumping off that bridge. This is a guy that at this point has nothing left to live for, it seems, because he's so vested in risking everything to bring down Rick Masters, and yet he is boxed in. You know, he's in this invisible vice, and in some ways, though, in a great many ways, he's created that invisible vice for himself. And here he goes. You know, he's driving the wrong way. Only Richard Chance would do that in Los Angeles. If you did this in Los Angeles now, you'd die. There's no way you'd ever escape this in any city on the planet. But LA, there's no chance. You wouldn't get but 100 yards before you're probably killed. Because car culture in Los Angeles is car culture, and there's so many cars on the roads. That's all we know in Los Angeles is cars. And you can't drive down the wrong way down the street anywhere, because you're really going to be asking for it. This ain't some quaint little town. This is Los Angeles, man. He's telling the cars that are driving the right way to get out of the way. And that's the quintessence of arrogance, if ever there was. So is Vukovic is joining in on that too. Oh, wow. Look at this. I forgot this scene. I forgot this. Look at this. Oh, in some ways, this car chase, this scene is even crazier sometimes, I think, than French Connection. Although French Connection, that might be probably one of the greatest car chase sequences in film, in Hollywood film. I think of Bullet as well. That's quite a good one too, set in San Francisco. Everybody's out to get this guy. And look at that. It's totally the mouse escaping from all the big cats. And by the time he's returned, it's sunset. Because he's been perpetually and continuously doing this. Excuse me, for hours it seems. And now there's a moment of peace. Who knew? I think it's kind of funny that you've got, I guess, these people in the background, it's just it's everything about the music and the dance. It's everything about Los Angeles and what you can find around any given corner. And Los Angeles is such a sprawling metropolis. It really is. Look at that purple. I love that. And again, you see the legs, the one leg, a woman's leg there. It's the same woman that we've seen a number of times. She was in the topless bar. She works there at the topless joint. And you've got her again, here. And again, she's shown by her legs. And it's just kind of the way that, the sexist way that filmmakers or, camera persons make that choice to introduce her by her body parts. And men typically are not introduced by their body parts in movies, in Hollywood films. They're not, right? They're not. Women are always, almost always, in some way, shape, or form, at least some of the women, not every single woman, is introduced by her leg or by her high heel or by, it's always like that. And that still is the case here now. Again, there's fairly low light being used here in this scene. There's this, very angry tussle here that I would say is a prelude to what very much to me looks like rape. And certainly could well be. And the scene just cuts off there. I thought that was interesting, because clearly the woman in that scene did not want what was going on. And you can see the Richard Chant's character, clamping down on her. That is clearly a prelude to rape. It clearly is. Now, did he in fact rape her in that scene? Well, we don't know, right? We don't know if that continued to happen, because the editing cut that right in half, right in the middle there. And I thought that was a very interesting place to cut it. And because, again, this is someone who doesn't care about people. This is the character we're looking at now, Richard Chance. He doesn't care about people. He barely cares about himself. He is astonishingly reckless. I know I've mentioned that word a million times so far, but he is. And he doesn't really much care about anyone, and certainly not himself, it seems. Someone who would drive the wrong way down the street and down a freeway in the busy freeway in Los Angeles is certainly someone who doesn't care very much about themselves. I love the red light here, deep red, saturated red. It's just a complete color scheme that's red. They're all in the danger zone. This is the first time now that John Pankow fights back and kind of takes the initiative here. He's had enough of the BS from William Peterson's character, and this is the first time we see Vukovich show a little toughness. And again, it's a bit out of character for him, but then you'll see that it's not, as we realize what's going to happen here very soon as the William Peterson character explores. And he's going through the world of the Rick Masters world, right? Where you've got the individuals who are very much artistes. They are androgynous. They may be gender fluid before people really know what that term means in 1985. They may be bisexual, which again, those things are all well and good, of course. I'm just saying that look at this here, the homoeroticism right there, right? Look at how close he is to him, right? Is this my package? And he, for all we know, he could probably be groping the Richard Child's character, and I think he is. Now the camera doesn't show that, but he may well be. And that's what this film does. And I like the way this film plays about with, not just to be playful, but to really entertain something that a lot of Hollywood films don't show us. Men manifesting these different parts of who they are. Perhaps this, whether it's androgynous, whether it's bisexual, whether it's whatever it may be, whether the character is a gay character or whether he's a straight character. And I think that Rick Masters is straight. But he's somebody who's very comfortable in his own sense of himself. So he thinks nothing of perhaps even fondling this man. But it's not because he's attracted to the man. It's because he's such a single-minded character who's very confident about who he is. He knows who he is. And so, he's just now taken money from a guy who says that he's going to deliver money to him. And of course, Rick Masters is still being played here because he doesn't know that this is a police officer, Secret Service agent. Dean Stockwell here, and he's kind of like the power guy now. Look at the power chair, and the background is all very corporate looking. He's a kind of masters of the universe figure. At this time, during this decade, the book, The Bonfire of the Vanities, came out. Tom Wolfe's smash hit book, which was made into a piss poor movie a few years later, I might add, that starred Tom Hanks, Melanie Griffith, and Bruce Willis, and directed by Brian De Palma. Awful movie, forgettable movie. But the book is unforgettable. It's an excellent book. And I just there was references in that book to Masters of the Universe. And Dean Stockwell here looks like one of those Masters of the Universe. Albeit he's on the West Coast and not the East Coast, and not in New York City, in Manhattan. He's conventionally dressed. He kind of stands out a lot here. So does Vukovic in his suit and tie. These guys are in the real world. That's what I think here, is that both of these characters right now are really facing some truths about what's going on. And they're both in the real world, and they are both mature adults. He's just being really open and honest here. He cannot go through with this reckless mission. And so he is, again, someone who really does understand what's going on. And, it doesn't matter how he looks, what his stature is. He's someone who's a stand-up guy. He's someone who is an adult in the room, whereas the guy that's taller, more statuesque, more of an alpha male, someone who takes charge, someone who is very aggressive, hyper aggressive, and a kind of cartoonishly masculine. Even the way he has sex seems very kind of performative, to the extent that we all perform when we have sex in a certain way, right? The pressure to perform or not perform. It's not even that. It's just, it doesn't seem very earnest to me. Here's John Turturro's character. John Turturro's sauntering through here, and this is, I guess, his girlfriend being kind of told to stay quiet. This is a really good scene. Now the tables are turned, and now Richard Chance gets his own back on John Turturro's character, who, his name's Carl in this movie, and he gets revenge because, Carl kicked his ass about half an hour ago, and now, here we go. And that's Claudia Leith in the background there. I think that may be Jane Leeves who plays Claudia Leith. You notice that women, as they are throughout a lot of movies in Hollywood, be they white women, be they black women, and I don't think there's too many black women in this film, maybe one or two. They have very, very background roles indeed. It's women being subjugated as they have been throughout film history, and Hollywood films are no exception to that subjugation of women, and so you've seen it again here. Women are just background figures in these movies, appendages for men and for their own amusement and gratification, as we've clearly seen. So we've got now, and that needs to end. And we still have films that perpetrate that. We see here John Vukovic without the tie on, and he's really at his wit's end, and he knows that he wants to pull away from this, but he cannot pull away from it. And here he is again, and he's kind of caught, you see. And he's really caught. I'm sorry, this is Rick Masters, excuse me. They do begin to look like each other here, Masters and Vukovic. And I see this scene, and again, there's an androgynous quality to the scene. The man looks, he could be a woman, and the woman from the background here looks like she could be a man with a wig on. And the 1980s was an era where people were so transphobic and still are, again, as I say, but the 90s and the 80s were an era of this. And you see this woman here sitting with her legs apart. And this is what Rick Masters is about. You know, he's someone who, he really is, you know, he's an adult, right? And he makes no bones about what his gratification is. He likes to see two women together. He likes to have sex with maybe one woman at a time, but he likes to see two women together. And there's a masculinity about Rick Masters that's absent in Richard Chance, who, you know, he kind of comes in, has sex, and it's kind of very, very dry and boring. As we see again, the titles here, another font here that it looks familiar. It's a bit smaller. And, you know, we see this kind of way that these two characters interact with women. And Rick Masters is much more of an interactive, communicative person with women than the Richard Chance character is, who is much more of a, you know, he's all about a means to an end and he doesn't care about anything else. So if he has to, you know, get rough or be this nasty person, that's what he's going to do, because that's his DNA. And it's a really, he's a very unattractive character for the sake of this film, which probably is one reason why, well, I'm not giving anything away here, why he doesn't make it to the end of this film. But when you haven't ever seen this film before, it's a complete shock when you see these characters just dropping like flies. And the title of the film could not be more apt. You see here now that Rick Masters has got all of these things going on, and he's got the people that he's looking at here, and he's got his henchmen there, and William Peterson is boxed in here now. He's totally boxed in, and the henchman is not trusting it. William Peterson is there by himself as Richard Chance. He's totally now in a situation where anything can happen to him, and he's got himself to this point where he's totally boxed in. It's like, again, the Wang Chung song, but I am held in this invisible vice, but I can't get away. And it's a vice of these characters making. They all are propelled and in propulsion mode, and they're putting themselves in these places that are very uncomfortable. I think the only one who is not uncomfortable is Rick Masters. He has an air of confidence to him that is not forced, it's not showy, it's very, very clear. Now we see what's going on here, and it's a real problem because it's 2 against 2, and so he thinks he's got Rick Masters. But watch this. Look at that. William Peterson is dead. And Vukovic has now fired back at the henchman. And Rick Masters has escaped. So it's over for Richard Chance, who took a chance. He took many chances, but he did not make it through. And now it's John Vukovic who is left to take this mantle, as we now see that 2 characters who you probably would have expected to survive in this movie completely die. First of all, the senior Secret Service agent who was killed, and now who we thought was the protagonist, the William Peterson character shot dead right there. It's a true shock to see that. And that's Rick Masters driving away in the car. He nearly kills John Vukovich. And John Vukovich, as played by John Pankow, is the character of conscience in this film. He is now left as the only character who is going to try to get this job done and try to get this slippery customer named Rick Masters. It's not an easy endeavor to be dealing with a mission like this. It's so extremely dangerous. And Secret Service people, and look at that reprise of that shot, that reprise. It's a lovely shot. I love that shot. That deep orange / red. And you've got, again, the purple and the blue, the indigo tone. It's all really well shot. And now it's this one man who's left to do what he didn't want to do. He didn't want to go into this the way he has. And now he's forced to become a manifestation of the deceased character now. You know, and that's the thing that's so interesting, because the roles shift amongst these men and they take on different personas. And look at all that fire. Look at all of that. This scene is got this kind of phantasmagorical feel to it, and you know, the slowing of the camera. You know, the camera and the video. You know, the camera slows down. You know, it's a slow-mo here. Some of this is slow-mo, as you can see slightly slowed down here as John Pankow's character walks amidst all this. And here's Rick Masters. See, this is the artist world, right? And he's trying to weigh whether he's going to kill him or not here. And he's really trying to weigh the impulses of what he would do versus what perhaps his partner would do. And he knows that he's got to do something here. And now look, he's now been hit. And Rick Masters appears to have won the day yet again. Right? So what you see here now is seemingly the end of yet another character, but not so fast, right? Because look at that. Look at that. Vukovich now. And that is just incredible cinematography. I love the stylizations and the color and the light there. And look at this inferno now that's going to... And he wants to keep going. You know, for the first time here, you see Vukovich. He kind of has that addictive quality to him now. He's shot him twice. Why not go for a third, fourth, and fifth time? You know, why not go for an eighth time? And look at that shot. I don't even know who that is. If that's Rick Masters, I guess it's an extreme close-up of him. Yeah, you know, he's an artist. Rick Masters is an artist to the end. The way he has sex, look at that. It's all decorous, and look at that. He's just very, very deliberate. And Rick Masters probably would have made a very good filmmaker. He's obviously very good at what he does. He paints pictures. He arranges objects. He arranges people on a chessboard. And that's what he's done throughout this whole film until it caught up to him. And so finally, Rick Masters is disposed of. And that was the by-the-book way of John Vukovich, who persevered in the end. You know, he got past this very reckless and hot-blooded, hot-headed character. And now he's left to pick up the pieces and keep moving. Dean Stockwell, right there. And you can see look at the way he's looking at her ass clearly, and the way the camera kind of lingers a little bit there too, and you can see how tight everything looks on her backside, and that's not an accident that the camera lingers there. These women, make no mistake, all look like models and all look a certain way. And here are these two women who I think they get a measure of escape and a victory, in quotes, really here. They drive away. They don't ever have to deal with these disreputable people again. It's all business, and they're out. And so now look at John Vukovich, who looks just like, now dresses the same way that Richard Chance, played by William Peterson, does and did. And you see kind of like the next generation, and now the woman that William Peterson was having sex with here, she now sees the new kid on the street in John Vukovich. See? She doesn't have much reaction to the fact that the guy that was having sex with her, and may have even raped her as well, by the way, she doesn't have much reaction to it, which tells you that he may well have raped her. I mean, it was certainly rape as far as I can see. The way it began, it certainly began that way. As far as I can see, you judge for yourself. But for me, it's not even a close call at all. And there's no such thing as close calls in that regard. Although maybe there's someone out there who would beg to differ. And the funny thing is that John Vukovich reveals that the Asian guy, and they call him the Chinaman. See, it's like, my goodness, the racism never stops. He said, he says that, and look at this, boom, you're working for me now. And there's that shot again from earlier. There you go, of Richard Chance, and there he is having sex with the same woman that you've just seen here now. So she is already envisioning that transactional relationship, and she's stuck in it now. Like, she's stuck in the invisible vice as well. And as an object, though, this object, she's constantly objectified, and she's being passed from man to man. It was Richard Chance before, and now it's John Vukovich. And now here is the end credits you see here, and the song from Wang Chung called "Wait." It's one of my favorite songs from this soundtrack. And the way that this goes on here, it's as if life goes on. The way that the shot here is going of a train, I guess, or a car. It's more like a train, I think, that's just driving by, and it just passes by, and it's like life goes on in L.A. And the thing is that the person who they called the Chinaman was actually an FBI agent. He was there for a setup and an entrapment. But because the Secret Service guy, played by William Peterson, was such a hothead, he didn't even stop to even look at any of that, and he ends up bringing him into a trap where one of his own accomplices kills him, and the so-called friendly fire. I really love the way that this final scene, or this final journey in the movie, unfolds with the Wang Chung song, and it's so apt, and it is now on the road. Right? I think that first part there could have been from a train, but now they're clearly driving on a car, on a street, on a freeway, in L.A. And it's pure L.A. Look at this sunrise or sunset it looks like, and it's just pure L.A. here. And the thing is, you don't really see any LA landmarks whatsoever in this film. But yet there's something about the film, the underbelly, the seediness about the film that is LA. If you find it, if you can find it, if you can drive to those places, you will find it, right? You will find those seedy places. And, Jane Leaves is one of the dancers, actually. There you see the cast coming up there. I think John Pankow was excellent in this film, as was Willem Dafoe. I think they're the two best actors in here. You see all these other names, and you see Robert Downey Sr., who passed away this year, and as I said, Dean Stockwell as well. And I just love the way that the credits unfold, and then boom, we get the shot of the sunset here again. These scenes reprised. Jerry Petovich, as you see there in the credits, he, as I said, wrote the book that was all, and co-wrote the screenplay. And see Jane Leeves again. So Jane Leeves had two roles in this movie. She was one of the dancers, and she was one of the characters in the film. I think the woman who we saw there. You know, this whole movie was really good because it shows you the violation of expectation that is so seemingly discordant with Los Angeles, as is shown in film. But when you live in Los Angeles, you know that there are days like this. It's smiles and cries. It's what was described in the Training Day movie with Denzel Washington and Ethan Hawke. Wow, I love this shot here. And we're coming to the end of this commentary. My name is Omar Moore. Thank you so very much for joining me here. I can be found on Twitter at the Popcorn REEL. It was a real pleasure doing this, and thank you very much indeed for your listening ear, and thank you, Mr. William Peterson. And there's that shot again.